Hello, I'm Oral Gibbs, and welcome to Oral Gibbs Live. And with me this evening, I have two very interesting gentlemen. They've made a great impact so far in the Parliament of St. Maarten. I have independent member of Parliament, MP Christopher Emmanuel, he's my guest on the program this evening. And we also have MP Buncamper. MP Buncamper is faction leader for the USB, and he's also a member of Parliament. Gentlemen, welcome to Oral Gibbs Live, both of you.
Good evening, Oral.
Good evening, Oral. How are you?
All right, good. Thank you. Fine. So I asked you all if you could come here tonight because you had a release, a joint release on the data protection. There are other issues we can talk about. But let's start off with that because I think a lot of people don't understand what it's all about. And some people say, well, it's not a big deal. They have a, so how important is this and why should we be so concerned? Anyone who's going to go first?
Bangsu.
Okay. I think we have to look at it from the larger picture. We have to look at how did it come about. And this is where, for example, right now we are having an issue where the government of St. Maarten agreed to the country packages that were presented to us. And in one of these aspects, I think it was H9, they talk about a consensus kingdom law on data protection. Now, there are two critical things with that. One, the government agreed to a law that we don't know anything about yet, a law that is now in its infant stages of the framework. But already, it's considered a kingdom law. The funny thing is with this law is that the Dutch government or the Dutch state is not subject to this law. So this law is strictly for Aruba, Curacao, and Bonaire, that our data is placed into an entity which is controlled by 3 people yet to be decided upon who they will be. And when we want to leave, we need to ask the Dutch government, who has absolutely no added value other than using our data when convenient to them, to leave. It is basically a CFT. The CFT is a kingdom consensus law that we agreed to with 10-10-10, and we have to ask an entity that has absolutely no functioning of that law to leave. And that's one thing that is extremely dangerous, in my opinion, because we are not learning from the mistakes we made in the transition of 10-10-10. I think we have to look at it more careful. They made a public presentation in Simpson Bay, and then the minister made a presentation behind closed doors in Parliament. And there we spoke a little more freely, and I will not discuss that aspect, other than what is being done is not being done, in my opinion, the right way. I think if you want to have a data exchange within the entities on this island, the tax office and SZV, hospital, immigration, whatever, I agree wholeheartedly that we create those things and we protect the entities against breaches, etc., etc. But to take the data and make it available to third parties and tell me, I heard an interview with the local chief of police, and that's when a red light went off by me, because they are also working on how they can gather data and then use it in the judicial field. And I'm saying, hold on. If you're investigating somebody, if you're investigating Buncamper, I have seen it. They create certain warrants and they go and get information by the banks or wherever. But if I am going to give you at your fingertip all the data of every single person on St. Maarten,
You don't need a warrant.
then you can pick and choose, oh, I'm going to prosecute this person. Let me see what I can find on him. Because I already gave it to you. And too often, the abuse of power shows its ugly face. And I'm saying no issue with data protection, but data protection for the country. If the kingdom feels so adamant about it, then make your data available to our country too. Then make the Dutch data available to the country of St. Maarten too. But that's not happening. And then I wonder why we talk about equality in a kingdom when it doesn't really exist. Those are two fundamental issues that I have with it. And I will, continue the discussions and the framework. But at this point in time, I have serious objections.
And what about you, MP Emmanuel?
You know, I admire my colleague, the way how he brings across the information and the issues so calm. I am not that kind of person, Oral, because this is disturbing to me. You know, Oral, I got elected as a member of parliament in 2014, and I've been there for the exception of 2017, the ending in December of 2016 to 2017. And this is the first time as a member of parliament or an individual that is representing people in this country that I'm scared to hold office, that I'm scared for our country and our people. Because as nice as my colleague can put it, it is dangerous. One, not only dangerous, but it's abusive. And here's the reason why I'm saying this. I am trying to figure out exactly, why do you need my medical records? Why do you need my tax record? Why do you need this information? And like Buncamper made mention earlier, 3 individuals of Dutch people would be monitoring this data that they themselves are not subject to. What it is another entity controlling the lives and aspect of St. Maarten. That's going to make things much more difficult. Much more difficult. And all it boils down to is when it comes to the judicial aspect of punishing and going after our citizens in this country. And I'm saying to myself, to the minister, what is it really that makes you feel this is something good? This is data that I am saying, okay, fine, sure, no problem. But then collect the data from SZV, collect the data from the receiver's office, census office, and we protect it here in St. Maarten. I have an issue with us always looking to do things together. Why am I going to go into a data protection plan with Curacao, Aruba, Bonaire, and why? For what reason? What reason? And these are the fundamental issues that I have in particular with this law. I don't think it should be a law, period. But I understand the reasons in terms of protecting what we have for us, Oral, for St. Maarten people. But why should it be monitored by Holland? For what reason? Why do you feel you should monitor this data and you are not part of it? And you're making it, what you call it, a rights way? You're making it a kingdom law.
Consensus.
A consensus law. You're making it. So all the islands are part of it except you. So in other words, you have access. Holland would have access to all of this data, but we as islands don't have access to the data of Holland. Why?
But as a consensus law, you in Parliament will have to agree to that also, right?
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
I think, Oral, that's where it gets interesting. And that's where this is something I warned about and I spoke up about since last year when we started accepting conditions sine qua non. You want money, you got to agree to A, B, C, D. And here we agree to country packages that are still to be worked out. But how are you going to work out a condition that says that we're going to have a consensus kingdom law on data protection? How are you going to work that out since you already agreed to a consensus? But thank God it's the government agreed to it. It's not the parliament. Remember, we passed a motion that said that our autonomy and our local constitution are not
local laws,
trampled
international
on.
laws.
The international laws and the treaties, I understand those, and to an extent even the charter. But it cannot trample my constitution because those 3 are in hierarchy: treaties, charter, constitution. While one trumps the other, you don't need to step on one to get to the other. And that's where I started to get a little concerned when I noticed how we were shifting in high gear to get funds. And I understand, I truly understand that we needed money. But you cannot, and people say you can't eat autonomy, and I agree with that, but you must know how to use your autonomy when you're negotiating moving forward within the kingdom. We gave away our autonomy because we never fought for it. We don't understand what we got with 10, 10, 10. But the conditions were pre-laid for us, and I think we didn't even understand those conditions when we accepted 10, 10, 10, and we are now making the same mistakes.
Same mistake.
I want to go back to this data protection plan or whatever it is in terms of the people of St. Maarten. It covers a whole wide area.
Very
Right,
wide.
so it's internet, it's a lot of personal data, it's a lot of medical, have you. I don't think people realize how dangerous this is to have in the hands of government, and to that extent, we don't know what's
But
going to happen.
but Oral, you said government, but they're not even government. It's 3 individuals that we don't even know about, don't you? We don't even. It's 3 individuals.
The bigger problem is
It's not even government.
is the usage of the data. Who all can get access to this data? And I liked when I don't know if accidentally they said it, when they said, yeah, but when you have international investigations, fine, then you have Interpol. Interpol represents the kingdom at international levels. And if they need data, they can always get the data. Why do I have to give you the data? So that you can sit up there and browse through everybody's taxes and say, you know what? According to me, these are doing tax fraud. You have nothing to do with my taxes. That's why I have a tax inspector in a tax department in St. Maarten. But suddenly now you have access to it. So the next thing is you coming down to do tax investigations, tax fraud investigations, or whatever you want to call it. These are the dangerous things that we have to be so cautious with. When you hear them asking for medical data, the next thing they want to investigate is the SFV. And they will say, oh, SFV did all of these. Look, and I'm not saying that's what they're intending to do, but I get that feeling all too often when I see the timing of how certain things happen in this country. Timing is everything they say, not only in politics but also in life. And too many things are too coincidental to say, no, that was just a coincidence. It's not anymore. It's properly planned.
But look at it this way, Oral. And this is what I'm saying to the government, I'm saying to the minister. Explain to me why. Because my medical information is between me and my doctor. But why do you need my medical information? Why do you call in that data protection my medical information, my tax information? Why? What is the purpose for it? It is simple. So you know what's going to happen? Oh, Oral Gibbs just opened a new station, but where is this money coming from? But he didn't file taxes for 2020. You know what? Let's investigate. And I think this is the part where my colleague missed, and he can explain it much better than I can because he attended the session that they had in Pelican. This entity is going to have far-reaching powers.
Yep.
You can't tell them nothing. The country, the islands, the members of parliament, the government has no more say. They have far-reaching powers. We have usurped the authority of parliament and government and give it to an entity that is protecting our data. It is dangerous, Oral.
Oral, it's nearly like the constitutional court and the common court. In the common court, if you don't agree with the decision, you appeal it. And if you don't agree with the appellate court, you go to the Supreme Court. The constitutional court, when they render a verdict, that's it. It's over. There is no appealing. See the difference there? The same thing happens here now with this data protection.
Yeah.
You cannot appeal what they say. You cannot say, I'm paying the fine, or I don't agree with your findings in the data breaches, or whatever it may be.
So there will be fines also in this?
Sure, there can be hefty fines if there are data breaches. If the bank is hacked, that's a data breach. If they don't report the hack right away, you see what's happening, especially in the Netherlands, this is a big thing right now. There are a lot of hackers getting into companies and they put in ransomware. And if you don't pay, they put out your information. Now, if it is the plumber next door, no big thing. You'll see who all you work for. But if it is the tax office and they get in and they say that if you don't, because you have no control of your data anymore, if you don't pay me, I'm going to wipe all assessments to zero. Nobody owes you anything anymore. Do you know what that means for the country? So, yes, data protection is extremely important. And when there are breaches, if it is because you didn't pay the license fee for the antiviruses or whatever, yes, then you can be held liable. then fines can be levied. But again, we can do that here. We don't need to put it in a regional body someplace controlled by people that we don't even know or have anything or right to tell them. Now, I asked the question, how does this work? Because if, for example, something would happen, the kingdom government, in accordance to the charter, has the right to step in when things go wrong. So what happens when things go wrong in that entity? Where do they step in? How do they step in? They can't. But you know what's so funny? It ain't affecting the Dutch. It ain't affecting the Netherlands. It's only affecting what we call the CAS, Curaçao, Aruba, St. Maarten. Because it doesn't affect Bonaire, Curaçao, and Saba. They are municipalities within the Dutch, so it doesn't affect that system. And I'm saying we got to be cautious. Nothing wrong with cooperation and working with each other, but you got to be careful. You cannot just give away your autonomy. And that's what we are doing.
Look at it this way, Oral. Look at it this way. So here we take in Aruba, Curaçao, and St. Maarten. Decide that we are going to put our data together. But there's no one from Aruba, Curaçao, and St. Maarten. There is no body from Curaçao, Aruba, St. Maarten that will be monitoring this data.
Yeah.
It is Holland. But Holland is not signatory or part of that law. They are not part of it. But they have access to it. They are the ones looking at it. They are the ones monitoring it. They are the ones that have control of it. Not St. Maarten, not Aruba, and not Curaçao.
But you got to send them the data.
Yeah, but
we have to.
That's the important
There
part.
it is, and we have to send them the data.
You got to keep updating the data. And if
Okay.
you don't do that, you can be held liable.
You can be held liable. Think about how insane it is. Because I'm saying to myself, but wait a minute. So in other words, I am giving my neighbor my light bill. I'm giving my neighbor my medical bill. I'm giving my neighbor my phone bill. I'm giving my neighbor all my information to protect for me. And then my neighbor can turn around and say, oh, but hold on there. You ain't pay your internet. And because you ain't pay your internet, I can't get Wi-Fi. So you know what? I can put a charge on you and take you to court for not paying your internet. This is what the neighbor telling you, you know. This is what the neighbor telling you, because you give this information to the neighbor. And the neighbor using this information so that they can get Wi-Fi. And because you ain't pay your internet, they're going to take you to court for it. It is insane. So it begs the question, when the minister went to Holland and met all these law enforcement and all these individuals, what was the discussion? What did you sign on to? What all went down? What happened? We don't know.
But this falls on the justice, right?
It falls under justice.
But it's the government agreeing to all these things, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes.
The government agreed to the country packages, and this is one of the country packages. This is one of the conditions, one of the reforms that is in the country packages. And unfortunately, at this point in time, the reform is not clear. That reform is definitely not clear. It has such far-reaching consequences for the country that you cannot just sit down and say, okay, well, go ahead, build the framework, build the law, write the law, and we will eventually have to rubber stamp it, because it was an agreement made by the government already with the Netherlands, because it was agreed to the country packages to get liquidity support. That's how that went. And nowadays we have the implementation agendas that are being signed off every quarter, and we're moving forward. It isn't as if we are waiting till coho reach. No, the TWO is the coho right now, and they are moving forward with the whole implementation agenda. So,
I mean, you want to say something?
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, what I want to add is this. So here we have these country packages that Parliament still didn't really get a good depth of debate in these country packages. But if you're going to put country packages together for the island, there are packages that are supposed to assist and help the growth of the island, strengthen your autonomy. So then the question begs, what's the added value? What's the added value? What is St. Maarten going to gain? What is the regular, normal people going to gain from me taking your tax information, your medical information, and giving it to an entity that Holland is going to put together to monitor? What are we getting from it? What's the reciprocity? So we are giving you this information. Aruba, Curacao, and St. Maarten, you have this information from our people that the government agreed to, Oral, to give to them. What are we getting back from doing that? What's the added value to this country package? None whatsoever. As a matter of fact, it's a detriment to our autonomy. It's a detriment to our economy because investors are going to come in here. Investors have to pay their taxes. So in other words, you are going to monitor everything that St. Maarten is going to use for its own growth. So if Holland decide, so if we decide to come a tax haven, even though we sign on to a number of these, okay? No, but we can amend certain things and decide we are going to become a tax haven for the ultra rich who wants to use Bitcoin, who wants to use cryptocurrency, and we are going to set it up that they can come here and pour millions and billions into this economy. Holland could say, no, we don't want that. But it adds to our economy and help us to grow. But they have this data. They can monitor this information and say, no. And that's it. You have no more say because you can't challenge the entity. You can't object to it, like what my colleague made mention with the Constitutional Court. Once they make a decision and they make a verdict, that's it. And it's the same thing with this entity. Once they make a decision, that's it. You can't challenge it. And I'm saying to myself, how is it that I have autonomy and I'm supposed to be a country and our entity is making a decision for a whole entire country? It's just like when I make the same example, Schiphol was making a decision for the whole entire country. If we don't deal with what Schiphol wants, we can't get liquidity. But that's hypocrisy and blackmail. And I am saying this is wrong. It is wrong, and it should not be whatsoever. And it will not get my support.
But it's going to come to the floor of Parliament.
Yes.
It has to. Yeah. It's a law. It's a law. So I believe right now, let me say this. The minister brought it to Parliament. We were also invited by the group that is at the steering committee, let's call it that, that's basically setting this up right now. There's one person representing St. Maarten that comes from the Ministry of Justice, and there were two other project leaders that came from the Netherlands, I believe, and we had our meetings. At the end of the day, no matter how many discussions we have, because you are leaving from the departure point that it's a consensus law, it means you have subjected yourself to the amen of the Dutch government, and I think that's wrong. Not everything is a consensus law. I think certain things, when you reform to lift the country up instead of making the country dependent on your checks and balances. If we are not big enough to do our own checks and balances, and mind you, we have made many mistakes, and I am not here to justify the mistakes we have made. But let's be honest, in 1983 is the first time St. Maarten became a recognized territory with a seat in Parliament. Not before that, never before. We don't even have 40 years yet. But we are treated as if we are 400 years old. And we should have done everything the right way. And I'm saying, that's a pity.
But some people say April 1st, 1983 was the beginning of the end of the Nelson days also. Just like how you mentioned this morning, because the first seat in Parliament, it was the beginning of the end because
Aruba,
1986, you know.
But Aruba said it already that they were leaving. That's why the 83 became so, because that was the 3 years before Aruba left. But again, let's be honest. Today we went through a whole training, a rigorous training once again in Parliament. And you know what was so important? We got a history lesson by Dr. Arduin. And she took us back to 1815 when the original charter was created in the Netherlands. No, in the Netherlands.
Yeah, but for Indonesia.
No. That was the grondwet. And in remember, in the Second World War, the Japanese invaded Indonesia.
Right.
And the Dutch and the Indonesians fought out the Japanese. And at the same time, when they had the Japanese out, the Indonesians said, we're going to move on. So the charter that was created for Indonesia, Indonesia said, see you all, and they were gone in 1948. That charter was eventually used for what we knew as the Netherlands Antilles. Because remember, before that, we were Curacao and the dependencies.
Yeah.
There was no Maarten. Maarten came into the picture officially
And
with a
it's,
seat in 83.
it's quite interesting that you mentioned that because at that time, the Dutch told the Americans that they were fighting communists. And when the Americans were convinced that the Dutch were lying, actually, they told them, well, we're going to withdraw the Marshall Plan support for you. That's how Holland actually moved
Let
out of
go.
Indonesia,
Yeah,
actually.
correct.
That's right.
You know,
yeah.
it's quite interesting. We got to look at history. The Dutch is not easy, and they haven't been easy in their colonies. And a lot of people feel that we're not a colony, but I think we're still a colony.
No, and history will teach us that we are not a colony. We were never a colony. You know what a colony is? It's a group of people. We were plantations. We were grounds that the West Indies Company used to own.
Chattel.
And in 1792, when that was dismantled, it became property of the state. And that time, the state was Spain. Remember, in 1815, Holland finally got its so-called independence again.
Spain, yeah.
And that's when the House of Orange was born, Blue Bloods. But again, history is a nice thing to learn from. And when you look at certain things in the Constitution of 1815, you still find them today in that Constitution. Unfortunately, they were not meant to be there. And I think enough has been said that the charter needs to be reviewed. The charter needs to be adjusted. And I think that's a point of departure that we take too lightly as country St. Maarten. We need to put the right people to listen. Parliamentarians can't just deal with, oh, we're going to change the charter. I'm not a legal expert. I'm not a constitutional expert. But if we know what we want as country, as an autonomous country, leading towards independence someday, because that should be the desire of every country. If its people don't want to become independent and always remain dependent, then that's a different story. But maybe we should give the country people, the residents, the free right to decide in a referendum what do we want as a country. Because then we also know as a parliament and as a government, how do we move forward? Because if people say, no, listen, you know what? We prefer to be dependent. We prefer to be the second S in best. Hey, if that's what we want, then maybe let's hear it loud and clear. Because the last time we had a referendum was in the year 2000. 21 years later, where do we stand? How do we feel? And at least we know as a country how to move forward the right way and not keep guessing how I feel or how my friend feels or my party feels. But no, the population has spoken. Because we always say, who's a St. Maartener? Well, we defined already who's a St. Maartener. People don't agree with it, but we defined it. Because we said in the referendum in 2000 who allowed to vote and who ain't allowed to vote, right? So that's the St. Maartener. Because they were deciding our constitutional future. A lot of people don't like it when you say it, but that's the history, that's the reality.
And Emmanuel,
What I wanted to add is a little bit more conjecture to the discussion in terms of here it is now that we are 10 years on, 11 years on, and I am saying, and it was my same position of not going to IPCO and my same position of not traveling to the Netherlands again. It doesn't fit the agenda to what I am saying that our country needs. And what is that? What's our position and real meaning of our autonomy? What is it? And how is it that we are autonomous, but yet you have not governments making decisions for you, but entities making decisions for you? And the Dutch government very well knowing that you're going to come up with strong opposition with certain things that you want to implement. So what do? Consensus kingdom law. They put it in that. And once they put it in there, that's it. That's it. You can back, you can argue as much as you want. Because they know, and again, I'm coming back to this point, they know this would be an argument. St. Maarten would make an argument and ask, why? What is the reason? And I've said this in so many terms. At this point, I am sort of tired of being in solidarity and making agreements now with Aruba and Curacao and St. Maarten. Why? Because we are totally different to all the other islands. Because we have a friend side. We have a friend side. Curacao doesn't have it. Aruba doesn't have it. Saba doesn't have it. Bonaire doesn't have it. Statia doesn't have it. Uniquely by itself, we have to take into consideration the other side of the island. And a lot of the things that is being forced on us simply doesn't allow us to cohabitate with the other side. It's going to get difficult, much more difficult. So again, I'm questioning this autonomy. I'm questioning this separate status. I'm questioning what it is we really have, that we can usurp our authority as a parliament and that a law can simply be worked on. It's already being worked on right now without the consultation of Parliament. So it's being worked on, it's done, and then they're going to bring the Parliament and vote on it. And that's it, or that's the crux of it. Everything is being worked on. The government accepted and agreed with these country packages. And then when they wanted to pass, they have a majority, bring it to Parliament. So regardless to the discussion, regardless whether it's good or bad for St. Maarten, vote on it.
Well,
and I have a problem with that.
I'll go to a quick.
I have to disagree with the last part of MP Emmanuel's position that they have the numbers and they can just vote.
But they do.
I think at
They
this
have the
point,
numbers,
I
Monks.
think at this point in time, the last vote last week Wednesday showed don't count your chickens. Don't just count your chickens and believe you have the numbers. I think this young parliament, and when I say young parliament, we have about 6, 7 parliamentarians in there that have not been in parliament before. And then you have a parliamentarian like Emmanuel that has taken a totally independent stance and corrects the wrongs when they have to be corrected and stands his position. So the numbers are not just simply in any one coalition's position. And I'm stating that I foresee serious pushback on certain laws. So I'm not going to say, it's going to be a walk in the park for the government either. But listen, compromise is always part of lawmaking. But I don't believe they can just take for granted that we are going to just go in there and rubber stamp the
But Toncha, with that, I can see where you're going with that, but with that being said, there must be a discussion. We must have that debate, Toncha.
That's the problem. We normally have the debate after the fact.
And that's what I'm talking about.
Too late.
And it's too late for you to peruse this. And not only to peruse it, but now you as an individual member of parliament, you have to take it to the expert. You have to take it to your expert to dissect this information. Because most oftentimes what happened, you have 3 days to go through the law.
But I think that's the bigger problem.
3 days.
That last piece about dissecting, I think Parliament needs to beef up in the Secretariat, they're legal, so that we can go to them and get a fair assessment on the law.
Oh, but we have that now with Caroline. But then imagine 15 members of Parliament going to Caroline and say, "Give me your opinion on this. Give me what you think on this." Then I mean, she's going to be overwhelmed, don't you? There's only one individual we have.
We need more people. We need more people.
All right, gentlemen, we have to go to a quick break. In case you've just joined us, you're watching Oral Gibbs Live. I have MP Emmanuel. MP Emmanuel is an independent member of Parliament. I also have MP Buncamper, who is the faction leader for the USP, and he's a member of Parliament. We're going to be right back right here on Oral Gibbs Live. Please stay with us.
The innovative Banco-Matico contactless smart card. Your Banco-Matico smart card is now equipped with a contactless feature for payments, so get ready to tap and go. Contactless payments are fast, easy, secure, and accepted worldwide at all Maestro-enabled contactless terminals. Tap for transactions equivalent to or less than 100 NAF, or the US dollar equivalent. You will receive notifications via email anytime you tap. Tap, tap, and pay fast with WIB. For more information, visit our website at wib-bank.net. Tap and go with your partner in progress.
In order to know what you want out of life, You need to observe, listen, and try it yourself.
Promises, we can make it. If we work together, that's just how it is. Let's stand strong, and serve the land. Working hard as one nation, yes we can.
The more difficult it is to achieve, the more satisfying it is to make it.
Just believe in us, we'll see you through it all. Never give up. Never give up. We can make it.
Never forget those who were there for you. And if you dream big, you might just achieve it.
The power to serve, standing for community. OGEB got the power to serve, the power to serve. We got the energy. OGEB.
Welcome back to Oral Gibbs Live. We're coming to you live tonight, and my guest on the program this evening, I have MP Emmanuel and MP Buncamper. They're my guests. Gentlemen, there are two other issues I want to speak with you about. One is Vineyard Heights, and also that whole Beacon Hill project that's taking place. What's wrong with the way the minister's doing Vineyard Heights? Why stop him? Why not let him continue doing what he's doing?
No, I signed on to a motion, and in that motion it came from the Member of Parliament, Rion Peterson, where in particular what grabbed my interest and made me say that this is a motion I can agree with is the part that made mention to cease the project until things are straightened out and come with a policy. No, we can't just allow and leave the minister continue, because as much as it's the prerogative of the minister to give land, but it's not his right to trample on the rights of other individuals. And that is what I think is happening here. And the minister most oftentimes made mention that things was done wrong and he's fixing it. But the minister never made mention what is done wrong. And if you're going to fix something, then you should fix what was already there. What the minister did, in my opinion, is creating another situation. Okay, regardless to how it was done, 51, 54 individuals engaged in a discussion with government, paid for made brief, was given promise, was given an intent, was given indication that, listen, this land will be made available to you. You continue with the process until government finds fit to put in the infrastructure. The point of departure for the minister is they don't have a deed. They don't have a buslite. And once they don't have a buslite, no, you can't be promised anything, so the land is not yours. No. That's not how it works. Government had an intention to give land to these individuals. So this is the reason why we are saying, and you know, so many things now is coming up from this whole Vineyard Heights that we believe the minister needs to take a back seat and work it out with the individuals that was there before. You can't simply discard them, remove them, and put on another bunch or another group of 25 individuals when the same situation exists, which is the infrastructure. Because that was the problem in the beginning for the 54, the infrastructure. It is government that did not continue the process.
So infrastructure is a prerequisite to getting the...
Not necessarily a prerequisite. Not necessarily a prerequisite. The reason why individuals or the Vineyard Heights or nothing is built there yet is because of the infrastructure. There is no infrastructure, and Buncamper can mention more about it because their family have plot right on the other side that has the infrastructure, but there's none on the other side. So the question is, if the infrastructure was there, all them other 54 would have already probably started to build. And then the minister goes on to say, well, he's going to build condos, he's going to build other apartments, and those can get a part of it. But what if they don't want that? What if they don't want that? The minister did not engage with the individuals that was there before. He did not call them. He didn't look at them. He simply said, no, listen, take them off. Here's a new 25, and I'm going to put them on. And that's the main problem with the Vineyard Heights.
What about, would you have to add MP Buncamper?
I think the MP said a mouthful. I think my concerns were also that there was a family claiming to be the heirs of Ann Richardson, and that they had some sort of verdict in the courts of Curacao, and there was a referendar, so somebody representing them, located in Bonet, I believe. I made mention of this to the minister because it caught my eye also as a landowner in that area. The minister told us, listen, first indications are it has no legal implications, but they're still waiting on some more legal advice. Now, you have that. You have the ombudsman questioning certain matters with the land where people had a promissory note. Again, be it a legal deed or not, the people that are involved are not experts and they don't know how government documents run. These were documents, internal documents. They were advices. So I think the motion of disapproval, which is a lower version instead of a motion of no confidence, where again you create instability unnecessary in the government. You tell them, listen, we don't agree with the way you're doing things, and we want these aspects to be dealt with. Get the policy in place. Don't give up no land until we do it, et cetera, and come back within 3 months or come back within 4 months. Yeah. That's also the reason I supported the motion, because we have a tendency that we go send home the people, just send home the minister, forgetting that we have to pay that minister for 1 year when he's sitting at home. And we put another one in place, as if we have money. So not always is that your first order of business. I think the motion of disapproval is a motion where a minister should make his decision. Should I stick around? Am I still worthy of the position? I think the whole approach towards the ombudsman, the office of the ombudsman, a high counsel, I think the minister didn't understand the role of a high counsel. You can't take Parliament to court. You can't take the ombudsman to court. You can't take the Council of Advice to court. Those are entities that are not a person. It's an entity. The Parliament is 15 people. So you can't take 15 people to courts. You can't just do that. I don't think he understood that. To then go and say, yeah, but the previous relationship, that's not relevant. Had the ombudsman not asked the questions and investigated, then there would have been a conflict of interest. Because whatever comes out now, good or bad, the ombudsman's office has to deal with it. So, and I think that was a critical mistake. Now, there was a cry, oh, send him home for the disrespect. We are a young country. Mistakes are made. He retracted the letter. And I think we started a good dialogue.
You give him the opportunity to apologize?
Again, I think the most important thing, Oral, is how we move forward from here. How do we deal with Vineyard Heights moving forward? Yes, there is no infrastructure in place. And if there's no infrastructure in place, why are you giving people a parcel of land that they cannot use at this point in time? Because they can't use it, they're not going to pay an ERPA canon either. Because you are giving me a cat in the bag. I can't do nothing with it right now. But I must pay to have a piece of land that I can't use. That doesn't make no sense in a normal common day, a normal day's work. So I think the minister has to step back, look at the whole picture, and say, okay, how do we move forward from here? And yes, the minister has the prerogative to grant land to those that meet the criteria. The questions that were asked about that, I think they were very clear why certain people were involved. And for me, it's a simple something. If there was a promissory note, then what do you do with that? Because you can't just sweep that under the table as if it doesn't exist. It does exist, and the people that got such a letter or got such a document had an impression that things were going to go good. And things went haywire after Hurricane Irma. And things have not been the same since then.
I got to add this, MP, is that it was the first time that I saw so many people in St. Maarten wanting Parliament to send that minister home. I was surprised. And at the same time, I have to commend Parliament for the first time in the history since 10-10-10 for showing maturity and doing the right thing. You know, because we've come a long way. And what MP Buncamper said is so true. We always were quick to send people home. This, in effect, some people say if they were a minister and got that, they would have left on their own. But again, he's there. So we have to deal with that. But I think what happened to those 54 people is an injustice. And when you don't inform them also, and you pretend that they never existed, and some of them paid money at the cadastre for all the paperwork, that's an abuse of power, an arrogance of power. And you know, it's when you become so arrogant in your position and you abuse your power and you write off people because you think, well, you have the right to do what you want to do, that is the feeling that people felt in St. Maarten about the minister. So I've never, in all my years, saw the people of St. Maarten so angry. Majority of people, because the minister have his people who believe in him, but the majority of people disapprove of his behavior.
And again, that's why I said I supported that motion. And not necessarily a motion of no confidence, but a motion of disapproval. Because like I said, and I'm going to repeat it again, yes, you can grant land. But what you can do is abuse your power and the rights of other individuals. The land was promised to other individuals, and I was a minister. We looked at that situation as well, and I was like, okay, they don't have a deed, so then I can take back. But when you go and get the advice, and the advice comes back and say, no, you cannot do that, because the previous government already engaged with these individuals, and there's a continuity of government. And this is the part where I think the minister has neglected that role of being continuous and not granting or following through. And it comes back to it again. You're going to issue now this same lot to a new 25, and there's no infrastructure. And there's no infrastructure.
Let me, I don't have that much time remaining, so I want to move on to Beacon Hill. A lot of people are not aware that Beacon Hill is government law leased land.
All FBAT.
Fully domain.
How is it possible that a company can acquire 3 lots of government long leased land in a residential area for commercial?
You wrote an article on that today.
Buncamper had a release on that.
There are a few things there, Aral. It has been common practice that people would get a piece of land from government and then sell it and make money on it.
But the conditions are that you have to have something on the land.
No. Nowadays, yes. In the deeds, the newer deeds, yes. Deeds 56 years ago, not necessarily. But this wasn't the first transaction. This transaction took place, I understood, back in March. And there was a whole debate about, was something built on the second lot, yes or no? Was a garage built there, yes or no? At the point in time when it was transferred, there was nothing there. And that means that in reality, you cannot transfer that land.
Fraud.
That's what the law states. That the minister wants to change the usage from residential to commercial because you're going to build apartments. Apartments, in one way or the other, are still residential. People live there. So it isn't as if you put a hardware store there or a supermarket. So I have some compassion to understand that piece. What I don't have so much of compassion with is the density in that area. When you look at Beacon Hill, Point Pirouette, those type of places, the density is excessive. And we are now putting in another 30 apartments. 30 cars going to be parked someplace, or 60 cars. The water runoff,
sewage,
etc., etc. I mean, there is no sewage lines there. So there's 2 places. It's going into the ground, and you're on cliffs there. So how does this really work with all these sewage plants? Do you have a sewage plant for that building, and where do you send that water because the only place I want to believe would be the sea. Now, Oral, there are a lot of questions that come up there. And I have said it, and I'm going to be asking for the reports to be able to see them, to make my judgment. I don't want to say A, B, or C was done illegally or wrong, because I am not in the possession of certain documents. But what I do have is statements made by the same Daily Herald that stated that the minister, according to them, the minister gave a verbal approval for the demolition.
Is that okay?
No, that can't be okay because Article 28A is in effect, and that means you need a permit. And yes, you can give sometimes a verbal approval if there's an emergency aspect to it, but a permit needs to be requested. And the head of permit said he's not aware of any permit request for the demolition. Now, when you get this out of the media, questions are going to come, red flags are going to go up, and this is nothing personal against the developer or the minister or the ministry. But you cannot be doing this like that and expect that everybody can just take it hook, line, and sinker as if nothing happened. No, something seems not to be correct, and the questions have been asked. I am going to formally send in the request for all the documentation, and we take it from there, because at the end of the day, the Ombudsman is now once again involved. The association asked for intervention from the minister. Nothing happens.
Nothing happens.
You call the ministry, nothing happens. But what's wrong then? Then you beg to wonder what you shouldn't be wondering. And that's unfortunate, because we allow to become, we are too reactive instead of being proactive when you see these type of problems coming.
Very quickly,
I'm going to go even much further than that. I'm going to request, whether it's a CC, but I'm going to request a public meeting on this information, because there's not only one aspect, but there's two aspects in Beacon Hill concerning another development. And what is even more scary to me is that you had GB individuals working on GB time with that development, using GB materials. So that is something that haven't even been out in the public as yet.
On the same property?
Not necessarily on that same property, but in the same location, in the same area. But what I'm saying is, too many things are happening and we are not getting answers. And again, the Ombudsman is involved. But I think the people of St. Maarten has a right to know. They have a right to know what is going on and what is happening in the country. When you go for a permit, on that permit paper has remodeling, demolishing, building. You need that. So look at it this way, Oral. It can't be in one breath that the minister is saying those in Vineyard Heights don't have a deed, so they can't get it. But on the other breath, you need a demolition permit, but I give you a verbal agreement, so go ahead and do it. Yeah, it doesn't work like that.
But money talks and nothing walks.
Okay. Well, we got to see if that's the case. We got to see if that's the case, and then you're asking for an investigation. You're asking for things to really, really happen. But before that, I think the minister needs to come to Parliament and answer a few questions.
Gentlemen, it was good having you all here this evening.
It's too short, man.
I wish you could have gone further. But at the same time, I got a WhatsApp message here, actually, too. And they're asking what's happening, if this is a sign of something new to come, because they're seeing MP Buncamper, MP Emmanuel, both here, both in the minority part of Parliament. Buncamper is USP faction leader and member of Parliament, and you, MP Emmanuel, is independent member of Parliament. So what's happening? Is it just a coincidence?
I can safely say that MP Buncamper is talking my language now. I'm just being funny, Oral. I'm just being funny. No, but basically, you know, we are two individuals in Parliament that for and foremost question most of the things that is happening, that is going on. And if you want to take it as an allegiance or working together, that's what it is. I think we should move across the board. We don't agree with a lot of things. Most of the time, we just have some heated debate, and I would say, yeah, but MP, you vote for this, and he'd be like, yeah, because I'm on St. Maarten team, and then I'd have to ask him about which team is that, and that's how the discussion goes. But people's going to take it for all what they want to take it, but he's always welcome now, always.
Thank you very much. What can I say? No, I'll say this, Harold. As long as we can work in the interest of the country, I don't mind working with anybody. I think this country needs stability. It needs leadership with a vision. But most importantly, it needs the support of the population. And I'm using the word support because too often we do things in a way that we are questioned after the fact. And that's why I said support.
Well, MP Buncamper, I want to thank you for coming, and MP Emmanuel.
Yes, it was nice.
Thank you for coming.
Time short, but it was good.
All right, good.
Thank you very much for being
thank you
here.
very much.
Allowing us to be here.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And that's it for now. See you next time. Till then, good night. Take care. Bye.